Hello, welcome to this video on quadratic simultaneous equations. Very similar to simultaneous equations, the idea with this is that you're going to get two equations and one of them will be quadratic, which is obviously where the name comes from. The idea being that there's going to be two unknowns in each equation. So in the first one we've got y and x, and then the same in the second one. And the reason that we can solve it is because you have two equations with two unknowns. So that way you can use one equation in the other one to help you solve it. So let's have a look at how we would do it in this case. So our first equation is the quadratic, and we tend to always do it the same way, which is where we think, well, we'll leave the quadratic as it is, we'll deal with the linear equation and manipulate that one, and we're going to substitute it into the quadratic equation. Now there are lots of different forms this can come in. This one here, it's actually straightforward to substitute one equation into the other. And the way it works is like this. The second equation tells us that y is the same as x plus 2. So if y is x plus 2, and in this equation we have y equals x squared plus 2x minus 4, well, we can change in the top equation this y for this value x plus 2, because they're the same thing. If y is the same as x plus 2, that's what the second equation tells us, then it's completely valid to just swap them around. So instead of writing y equals, we can write x plus 2 equals x squared plus 2x minus 4. And for each of these quadratic simultaneous equations, we're going to try and do that same first step. We're going to try and substitute the linear equation into the quadratic. That's what we've done here. Once you've got that, well, we now need to find out what the value of x is, and we can do that because we've only got x's in here. This is all just x's. It is a quadratic, and if you remember, the way to solve a quadratic equation is, well, we need to get it equal to 0 first, so we need to do a bit of rearranging. So I can rearrange this by, well, I want to get it equal to 0, so let's get rid of the x, so let's minus an x. If we minus an x, that will give us 2 equals x squared, and then we've taken away one x, so we just get left with an x on its own here, minus 4. So we've taken x away from both sides. And then the next part, we need to just get rid of the 2. So we can do that by subtracting 2 from both sides. So minus 2. So that will give us 0 now. We've taken away the 2, equals x squared plus x, and then subtract 6, because we've taken 2 away from that. So that's always going to be our second step. We're always going to try and substitute one into the other, rearrange to get it equal to 0, and then see if we can solve this. Now, this can be solved quite a few different ways. It tends to factorize. Every now and then you need to use the quadratic equation. Most of the time it will factorize, and this one will factorize. So just a quick reminder on factorizing, we got to think of two numbers that multiply to make the end number and add to make the middle number, which is kind of like a 1 here. You can imagine this being a 1. So in this case, two numbers that times to make 6, well, it could be plus 3 and take away 2, because that would give us one value of x, 1x in the middle, and that would multiply to make negative 6. So this will give us our x values. Because we've got two brackets multiplied together that make 0, one of these must be 0. Either x plus 3 is equal to 0, so the left-hand bracket, or x minus 2 is equal to 0. If x plus 3 equals 0, then x is negative 3. If x minus 2 is equal to 0, then x is equal to 2. So that's our two x values, and you'll always expect two values from a quadratic, and with these quadratic simultaneous equations, you'll always expect to get two values for x, which will then mean we're going to get two values for y. So if we look back at our original equations, we've got our quadratic here, we've substituted into that, we've simplified it, factorized, and then we've got values for x. We now need to find values for y. The easiest way to do that is just to use our second equation. Y is equal to whatever our value of x is plus an extra 2. So if we go back to here, if y is equal to x plus 2, well, if x is minus 3, then y is equal to minus 3 plus 2. Just substituting that x value into the equation. So in that case, y would then be equal to minus 1. Or if x is 2, then y is equal to 2 plus 2. So in that case, y is equal to 4. So we kind of get two solutions, like a pair of solutions. X is minus 3, y is minus 1, x is 2, and y is 4. So that's that question done. But it's a good idea just to double check that it works. So we've kind of used the second equation, we've substituted into that to get the y value. It should also work for the for the quadratic equation, I should say. So if I write that one down, y equals x squared plus 2x minus 4. X squared plus 2x, take away 4. So this should work with our x values from before. So if we substitute x as minus 3 into here, this is, obviously this bit is optional, it's just a check. So you don't need to do this every time, but it's a good idea to do it, especially if it's an exam, you want to check you got the right answer, check you've done all the working correctly. So if x is minus 3, then this is minus 3 squared, it's 9, plus 2 times minus 3, so that's minus 6, minus 4. So 9, take away 10, that would make minus 1. So that one works, good. If we try it with x is 2, then you get y equals 4 plus 4, take away 4. So that's just y is equal to 4. So again, that one works as well. Always a good idea to do this just to make sure you've done the working correctly. These questions tend to be worth about 5 marks. So it's definitely worth spending just 30 seconds or so just double checking that you have actually got it correct. Okay, let's look at a second example. Again, quadratic simultaneous equations, we're going to get one linear, which is in this case our top one because there's nothing squared, and we're going to get a quadratic equation, which is our second one here. And just like the first example, we're going to try and substitute the equation, the linear equation, into the quadratic. And last time we had both equations were equal to y, so we just substituted one into the other. That doesn't work straight away here because the top equation, it doesn't have one value equals the other, which is always a bit of a pain. So we need to do something first. So when this isn't x equals something or y equals something, you need to rearrange it into that form. We can pick, we could do y equals. We're going to go for x equals because it's slightly easier to rearrange this by just subtracting 2y rather than having to minus x and then divide by 2 to get y on its own. So if I rearrange this, like I said, I'm just going to subtract 2y from both sides. So that will give us x equals 2 minus 2y. So we've rearranged the top equation so that we have a value, so x equals something. You always need that to substitute in, and now you can see that we've got x equals something just in terms of y. So what we can do here is wherever we see x in our linear equation, we can change that for 2 minus 2y. Okay, so let's do that. Let's substitute one into the other. So instead of x here, we're going to get this 2 minus 2y. You always want to do this in brackets because you're not, well, you're going to make mistakes if you don't put it into brackets. And what we've done is we've changed the x for 2 minus 2y, and then we need to square everything in that bracket. We're still going to get plus 8y from before and equals 8. So we just kind of copy the rest of the equation in. Now be really careful with this first bit. The really, really common mistake is just to think, well, I just do 2 squared and I do minus 2y squared. But actually when we square something, you've got to remember that means multiply by itself. So if we're multiplying this bracket by itself, then that's going to be 2 minus 2y multiplied by 2 minus 2y. Like that. And then obviously we still get the same equation from before. So really important, whenever you see this bracket squared, write it out like that. And then if you remember we need to multiply this bracket, there's lots of different ways to do that. I always do first one times this one, and then times the last, and then this one times this one, and this one times this one. So just following along those lines, we multiply it out. So 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times minus 2y is minus 4y. And then minus 2y times minus 2 is another minus 4y. And then finally, minus 2y times minus 2, where we've got two minuses multiplied together. So that's going to make a plus 4y times y squared. So that bit is all that double bracket expanded out. And then we still have plus 8y equals 8. So just like in the first one, we substituted one equation into the other, and now we need to, once we've expanded it out, simplify this down. And again, it's going to be a quadratic. We've got y squared, so we want to get it equal to 0. What I'm going to do first is just kind of simplify this bit a little bit. So we've got 4, well, there's no more numbers, that's still going to be there. So let's leave that there. I've got minus 4y, so minus 8y, but then plus another 8y. So those y's are all going to cancel out. And then we've just got a y squared, so plus 4y squared equals 8. Okay, remember we're trying to get it equal to 0. So how would I get this equal to 0? Well, I just need to take away that 8. So I just need to subtract 8 from both sides. If I do that, I will get minus 4 plus 4y squared is equal to 0. Okay. Now, I think that's not the way we would normally write it. We'd normally have the quadratic term first, the squared term first. So I'm going to just rewrite it. All I'm doing is just changing the order. Minus 4 equals 0, like that. Now, I'm hoping already you've spotted something here. This is all squared. 4 is a squared number, y squared is squared, and minus 4 is a squared, and we're subtracting it. So this is what we call a difference of two squares, or dots, difference of two squares. If it's a difference of two squares, it factorizes the same way every time you square root the first one. So the square root of 4y squared is 2y, and you square root the second one and add them together. And then you have the same, but you subtract them. And you can check that that works. You can expand that out and see that that does make 4y squared. The two y terms would cancel out, and you get left with a minus 4. So we factorized, and just like last time, this will give us two solutions for y. So we'll either get 2y plus 2 equals 0, or 2y minus 2 equals 0. So for the first one, we subtract 2 from both sides. So 2y equals minus 2, and then if we divide by 2, y is minus 1. Or for this one, 2y equals 2, so y is equal to 1. Just like last time, we'll get left with two y values. And again, just like before, we've got the y solutions, but we still need to go back and figure out the x ones. Now, as always, we've got two solutions you could substitute into either one, but if we use this first one here, the rearranged version is fine, or we could use the original. If we use this one here, this will tell us the x value a little bit easier, and then we'll use the quadratic one just to check we've got the right answer. So x equals 2 minus 2y. So our other equation is x equals 2 minus 2y. And we're going to substitute that y value into here to give us the x one. So x equals 2, and then we're going to do minus 1 multiplied by minus 2. So that's going to be plus 2. So in that case, x is 4. Or the other one, if y is 1, we'll get x equals 2, and then 2 times 1 is just going to be minus 2. Or minus 2 times 1 is minus 2. So that will be x is 0. So that is our two solutions for x. So we've got the pairs again, just like before. Always a good idea, every time I would do this, is just to check, have I actually done that correctly? So if we do our check, we're going to use the other equation to help us. The other equation was x squared plus 8y equals 8. Okay. So x squared plus 8y equals 8. So we should work for both solutions here. X is 4 and y is -1. So if we put those in, x is 4, so we're going to do 4 squared, and then we're going to add -1 times 8, so that's going to be -8. And that should make 8 if our question works, if our solution works. So 16 take away 8, that does make 8. So tick, that one works. If we do it for the other one, well, we're going to do that when we've got y is 1 and x is 0. So we've got 0 plus 8 times 1 is 8, and that does indeed make 8. So that works as well. So we've checked both solutions work, and there we go, we finished our question. So I think that's it for the video. If there are any questions, leave them in the comments and subscribe. Thank you.